Hi, Tasha. Natasha says you want to talk about the restrictive nature of religion for psychopaths.
Yeah, I have met someone that I believe was a psychopath, and we were discussing religion, and he expressed to me that if he did not believe in religion, that he would then be free to do anything he wanted, and the only thing that kept these crimes was his belief that God would get him. And so I'm wondering, if one of the very psychopaths from these, and if if the world became all atheist, what could we possibly put in place to restrict them? Any
So
thoughts?
this is a very interesting topic, and actually, like, as I've done rotations in psychiatry, and there's some legitimate things we need to talk about here with regard to conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. And I'm not a psychiatrist. People who struggle with these should have somebody that they can go to about this. But it's an interesting topic when we're talking to someone who's religious, because I know a lot of people that bring up this particular argument, or even they'll bring up the topic of your, like, everyone knows what morality is, and everybody knows what's right and wrong, and that's why we all know that God exists. And I like to bring up antisocial personality disorder for this reason, because some people do not have a concept of what morality is. And it's not necessarily, and I hate the fact that it's so stigmatized, because oftentimes it is. And it is of no fault of this person. These people are not doing anything wrong that they know of. Their brains work a little bit differently than ours. And so a lot of times when you're approaching people like this, and when I hear people bring up this argument, oftentimes it's the person making this claim isn't actually a person with conduct disorder or antisocial personality disorder. Oftentimes it's somebody who uh, is knee deep into religion, to where they just don't understand why you could have morals and not being religious. So I'm probably gonna say that I'm gonna assume that this person doesn't have the disorder and is just making the argument. But in the cases of people, like, to answer a question, for people who have the inability to think through uh, ethical issues or moral dilemmas, how we often approach this is with social consequences. And so even if there isn't a deity to say you can't do this or you're going to hell, we can utilize things like social consequences. And like with children, I've seen some patients who are kids that don't have a concept of morality. So how do you raise a child who can't grasp that? You utilize consequences, and unfortunately, the best thing we have in our system right now is to let them have an experience with law enforcement, which is a very unfortunate thing. And I hope that we can find something better to where they don't need to have those run-ins with law enforcement to face those consequences. But oftentimes you have to give them the connection in their brain of, I do this action, I get this punishment. And yeah, it might not be a supernatural one, but I do this thing and this person doesn't want to be friends with me anymore. Or I do this thing and I lose my job. I lose my house. You lose something, and you don't need supernatural consequences in order to enforce the idea of consequences for people that need them. Kelly, do you have any thoughts on this?
Um, yeah, I don't know that I think if you're talking about what do we use to replace religion for this problem, I think science, right? Does that make any sense? We don't. I realize that
No.
religion helps a lot of people with with psychopathology. Would that be the correct word there? but I don't know that I know it helps them on the short term sometimes, like get through a day, but in the long term, it's not really healing anything or really helping in the long term. So I would hope that maybe we can get religion completely out of mental health care, so that we can actually get people help instead of pseudo help, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying. My concern is that this person seemed very efficiently restricted from committing crimes by, and I can't imagine a law enforcement regime that would be as efficient as that.
I'm not talking about a law enforcement
More for
regime, though. I'm talking about going to the heart of the problem and making it so that this person doesn't feel like they have to go out and commit these crimes, dealing with the psychopathology instead of dealing with the morality of it. You know, actually tackle the medical problem, right?
Identifying the problem early and healing it before the crimes begin.
Yes.
That's essentially what we do with children, because conduct disorder is a condition that you get as a child. So you don't get antisocial personality disorder as a child. That's specifically adults. So you diagnose it. Hopefully, you diagnose it as a child, and then you can give them psychiatric treatment before it develops into an antisocial personality disorder. These are kind of contiguous conditions, and this is a very nuanced topic, and I appreciate you bringing in this kind of a discussion, because I honestly don't think that the system we have is the right way to go. I think it's the best that we have right now, but absolutely, I think we should do better, because unfortunately what we get is these kids with conduct disorder who end up going to juvie at young ages, and then they just end up getting lost in this law enforcement system.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that it's very dehumanizing for those people who aren't operating, like they're operating in a way that is not typical for society and not normative for society, but their brains don't know any different in that case. They can't process that. So is it fair to dehumanize somebody who has that going on? And no, it's not. I wish we could find something better. I don't entirely know what the right answer is, but it's not necessarily religion, because now you're adding in something that we can't even verify is true. Do we add something false just to keep somebody in line? I don't know if that's a better alternative. I mean, it might be humanistically better. I could see why potentially it could be more humanizing than locking them up forever, but it's still not a good solution. It is not an end goal of a solution. So we should look beyond all of what we have right now, hopefully, and get to something better within the medical science, where Kelly is going, trying to say, what can we do to impact the brain chemistry so that they don't need these drastic interventions.
Right, so that they don't feel the need to go out and do these antisocial behaviors. And you mentioned that kids getting lost in the system, and that happens so much. And I think a lot of times the judicial system that we have in place right now, at least in the United States, makes criminals often. We take kids who can probably be a lot better and put them in a situation where all they're learning is how to be a good criminal. And I think that's wrong. So I don't think the judicial system or criminal incarceration is the way to solve this problem at all. We had a young man that was a friend of my son's that had been kicked out of his house. He wouldn't take his medication, and he would have these episodes because he wasn't on the medication. And we tried to help him out. We came and let him stay with us for a little while, but he went out to a local store while he was staying with us and had an episode, ended up getting locked up, and he's been locked up ever since. That was over 2 years ago. So, and he's not locked up in an institution. He's locked up in jail. And the jail definitely isn't helping him. So we gotta not throw kids into that type of environment because it's not helping him. He's not getting anywhere near the help that he needs. He's not a criminal. He's mentally ill.
Yeah, Natasha, let me ask you, are you religious? Like, where do you stand on this?
I was raised in a very interesting way. My parents never told me their beliefs. They expected me to develop my own in my own way. And by I had decided theist. So I have my own unique point of view on everything because I didn't join a group that taught me things. However, I have observed, and if you'll allow me a second question, when I talk to a lot of religious people, it seems to me that they have no practice in making their own moral judgments. They very much rely on what they were taught without ever thinking it through. Being raised in a religion actually prevents you from developing a moral sense. Any idea? I'm just trying to figure this one out.
I think you're correct in some instances. I think there are good and bad morals in most religions. I don't want to condemn a whole religion as being bad morals because there are some good. Slavoj Žižek, he's a Serbian philosopher, he says that he's an atheist Christian because he doesn't believe in any of the supernatural things that are there, but he thinks that Christ had some good things to say that if people followed them would make our society a little bit better. So there are some good morals in there. I don't think that everything in religion is good, though.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is the process of being raised in a religion preventing people from naturally developing their own moral judgment.
I think,
if you're handed everything, do you not develop the practice of thinking everything through with your own compassion and empathy?
Yeah, I could see that being true. But also kind of going along with that, I noticed my own upbringing was very conservative, fundamentalist, evangelical. And the shift from being raised with such black and white thinking about morality to learning about the shades of gray and everything was kind of a shock to me. And I think it is for a lot of people. And I think that's what ends up being an issue. I think if you're raised to think about black and white issues, like this is absolutely okay 100% of the time, and this is absolutely not okay 100% of the time, and not leaving room for gray, yeah, it's very hard to adapt to going out and seeing a situation where somebody might have to steal in order to feed their family. And like, hold on, well, stealing is bad, but people dying is also bad. So what's the right answer? And too often in the real world, there is no right answer. There's only bad answers, and it's just which is the least bad option to go with. And like that's oftentimes how my thought process is in medicine. Nothing is black and white, but you have people even trying to leave religion that adhere to some of these more outdated ideas because they can't get past the black and white thinking. They would think this is right 100% of the time, or it isn't. And that's not how we can really engage with the world. So I think I do agree with you on that.
That's very insightful, Ben.
Any other thoughts, Natasha?
Yeah. Natasha?
No. I just I have this odd hobby where I ask everyone I meet the same question for a week. And last week I asked people how they made moral judgments. Something as simple as, will I hold the door for a stranger who's carrying packages? And very religious people would sometimes answer the Bible. And I would say, do you carry a Bible with you, flip through it to the right page, and then make the decision? Or is it some other way? And everyone, upon questioning, will fall down to, I had empathy for the person, so I opened the door.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing that we develop our moral sense or our moral decisions from compassion and empathy. But yeah, you guys are great. I love your show, and I am learning so much. But that's all I had this week.
I wish I could say it was mine, but it's Dan's. But yeah, and I think that's a really cool hobby. I'd love to. I would love to see some of the data you collect with that. I uh, Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that compassion and that empathy. And it's been my experience that a lot of those same people don't see the shades of gray. They only see the black and white. Is that something that's been a part of your experience, Natasha or Ben?
I haven't collected data on that.
All right. Yeah, it's just something that, and I don't know if it's true or not. It's just something that I've noticed. So it's just, I don't have any real data on it. Just kind of an observation. Ben, do you have any? Have you ever seen that?
I don't have any objective data.
Yes.
But
Yeah. Neither do I.
I do see the mindset, and it kind of goes along with what I talked about with intuition and our brains desire the least resistance to get to whatever answer. And so a black and white method of thinking is a very low resistance way to get to an answer, whether it be a correct answer or not. And if you have shades of gray, it's much more difficult to think through. You have to put energy into processing that, and you have to be willing to say, I don't know what the right answer is. And so, yeah, I think just we as humans gravitate towards that easier answer. And it takes work to undo that. It takes
Mhm.
work to counteract the patterns that your brain already wants to make and say, no, this is a bad way to think about it. And I think if we do this with more things in life, and that's why we even have this show, is kind of overcoming the bias and heuristics that we're going to naturally think as humans with imperfect brains. So I've
Mhm.
really enjoyed this conversation.
And it's not easy to do that. It's really not. I always say it's easier to learn things than it is to unlearn them. But you have to want to unlearn them if you want to make the world a better place and yourself a better person. These are things you do have to work on and get rid of these biases.